to a Hope 1032 podcast.
Hello friends, I'm Collett Smart, psychologist, teacher and author, and it's so good to have you here on the Raising Teens podcast. I have such hope for this generation of teens, and so if you're navigating the ups and downs of life with teens and tweens, you've come to the right place. My guests and I are here to share practical, science-backed tips to support you and your family today. Don't forget to subscribe and then join me on my Instagram and Facebook, and let's help this generation thrive together. Welcome to this week's mini episode. I want to talk about something that came up on a panel I was on last year, and it's something that just seemed to have parents talking about afterwards. I even had responses emailed to me and to other people on the panel. It's something that parents carry every single day, but we don't often have words for it. It's called the invisible load. You might sometimes hear it called the mental load or the cognitive load. Really what it is, it's that behind-the-scenes emotional thinking work that's required to just keep our families running smoothly day to day. It's all that planning and remembering and anticipating the things that might happen or might come up. It's a running list in your head that just never seems to switch off. I know it feels that for me. My mind is always going with my mental load. But before we get started, I want to set the tone for today's conversation. So yes, we're going to talk about the invisible load that a lot of you are carrying, especially during the teenage years. But I want you to know that this isn't a doom and gloom episode. It's definitely not about blaming anyone or keeping score or pointing fingers at who's doing what, isn't doing something. It's really just about understanding patterns that show up in our families. And the good part is that once the invisible load is named and recognized, it can become something we can do something about. And there's relief when we understand something we hadn't recognized before. It can make things feel a little bit lighter. It's not about overhauling your whole family life. As always, I want you to be able to just take something that could work for you today. So if something feels a little bit uncomfortable at first, please stay with me, because after we look at the research and some of the reality, I'm going to move on to things you could try to ease the pressure in your home. So the mental load. I came across this fantastic analogy on how we could look at describing this invisible load. Imagine your family household as this really busy airport. The physical chores are like the planes taking off and landing. They're visible, they're tangible, there's some clear completion points, so good start and end points for what's done. The mental load is what the air traffic controller does. They're constantly monitoring all the aircrafts, they're anticipating possible conflicts, weather changes, looking at safety protocols, are they followed, are they being adhered to? They're trying to coordinate hundreds of different details all at the same time. Now imagine that most households, one partner is both helping fly the plane and working as the air traffic controller, while another partner simply might just follow the flight instructions when they're asked to. And this can create a bit of an imbalance. When researchers looked at this concept of the invisible load, they actually looked and found 21 distinct tasks in categories like family calendars, cleaning, food management, social relationships, and a whole bunch of others. I'm sure you'll have your own in your head right now, and you could probably add to the list, but here's some that are actually going on in my head right now. So things I'm carrying are the emails that I still need to send today and forgot to send. I'm also wondering if there's milk for breakfast tomorrow, and because school is back, have I stocked the pantry with essentials for school lunches for my son that's still at school? I'm also the basketball team manager, and I need to try to organize a bus for an away game. And so I think you will be able to have a whole list for yourself that will look completely different to mine. But while you're listening to this, whether you're driving in the car, doing gardening, or doing something around the house, you'll probably rattle off another 20. And because this work doesn't always look like doing, like the dishes or the washing looks, it can often go unseen, and it's not always seen as a real work, but it is real work. It's heavy for many parents, and it can feel really exhausting because your brain, as I said, it never switches off. What's interesting is that the University of Bath and the University of Melbourne did some studies, and they found on average, mothers handled around 70% of the household mental load compared to fathers. While fathers are contributing to mental labor tasks, they are much less likely to say they are primarily responsible or that they feel primarily responsible for them. And they tend to take on more episodic type tasks like the finances or home repairs when they come up. This load also included mothers who worked and earned more than fathers in the home. However, the research found that single parents, so single mums and dads, took on a full mental load. And the implications for this showed things like stress and burnout and poor effects on career advancement and family dynamics. And that's understandable because sometimes mums can feel really frustrated or can feel resentful because of what they're carrying, or the stress can lead them to feel anxious, and that spills over into how the family dynamic feels day to day because the family often absorbs what the mum's mood is for the day. Now, the good news is that once the invisible becomes visible, it's much easier to share. So during the teen years, the invisible load also changes shape. And I think maybe because our teens' lives feel a lot less predictable compared to when we're raising toddlers, and there's many reasons for this. Here's 5 off the top of my head. I think because when we're raising teens, there's a lot less physical work compared to when we're raising toddlers, and the work morphs into emotional monitoring. So check-ins that we're doing without even realizing it, wondering, are they okay? Is this mood normal? Should I be worrying? Even if they say they're fine, should I be asking them again how they're doing? Another one would be the social navigation. So we're wondering and worrying about their friendships and conflict or their social media use. The social media ban that's just happened. Are our teens being excluded? Is there peer pressure they're struggling with? Is there late night worrying that is going on for them? We ask ourselves, should I step in or should I let this just play out? Another one is school and activity tracking. So we're thinking about our children's assessments and tutoring and exams, and are they motivated, and what is their future pathway? What about sport and violin schedules? And then navigating their growing independence. So we're thinking, how do I balance letting go and letting them explore and grow, but also keeping them age appropriately safe? And then the 5th one is insert your own here. Because as I said, you'll have something that you are carrying about your teen that doesn't fit into the other 4. Well, what can we do? I think small changes can make a big difference. And I'm not trying to sound trite, but when we just try to change 1 or 2 small things, the load can already start to feel shared more consciously, and then everyone benefits. As I said, the partners benefit, the mother benefits, or the person who's carrying the load benefits, and even our teens benefit when we start to make small changes. One of the biggest mindset shifts with this invisible load, especially in the teen years, is realizing that this stage can actually give our teens more opportunity to grow when we share things rather than less. And I know you'll be probably having a bit of a chuckle because none of our teens are going to say, wow, thanks, Mum, for sharing the invisible load. Now I'm going to take it on and, I've heard you and I'm onto it all, and then everything magically changes the next day. I'm not trying to imply that, but it's really that we can start bringing our thinking more into the open with our teens than we could with our young children, and start handing over things a little bit step by step and taking some of the pressure off of ourselves. So here's the 3 areas we could try. The first one is with our partners. The second is with our teens specifically. And then the third one is as a whole family. With our partners, if you have a partner and you are not a single parent, we really need to try and make the invisible visible. Many partners are really doing the best they can. So they aren't avoiding the load on purpose. Some of them just can't help what they can't see. They haven't thought about this before. They haven't considered you might be carrying this load. They might never have read about it or heard anyone talk about it. And sure, we could say, well, they should understand or they should think about it, but some of them just don't. I know even my husband has said to me, and he's amazing, he has said to me, babe, I can't read what's in your mind. You need to talk to me and tell me what's going on inside your head. I'm not a mind reader. And I think what I've said to my husband is sometimes instead of asking for help, I need to start naming what that mental work is so that you can see what I'm carrying in my head. So I'm not just doing reminding about school. I'm tracking deadlines and moods and stress levels. This is just what I've carried today. And what takes my energy isn't the task sometimes, it's actually thinking about it. This can shift conversations away from finger pointing or who's doing more and feeling frustrated to how can we think about this together and have a shared awareness about what's going on in our homes. And that can maybe be the first step of relief for you if you're the person carrying the load. The second one is shift away from doing for our teens to doing with teens. Again, inviting them into responsibility, not into being perfect. And as I mentioned, our teens aren't all going to jump and say, hooray, I've got more responsibility. But remembering ourselves that our teens don't need us to manage everything. And that's been a challenge for me as a mom. Because I've always done something, I tended to sometimes keep doing things for longer than I should. I admit it. There's things that I've done for my kids sometimes when I've taken a step back and my husband has said to me, why are you still doing that for the kids? And sometimes I am carrying a mental load because I'm choosing to in some areas and I need to let things go. And so our teens need opportunities to practice responsibility. We also need to change our mindset in that we're still being supportive even if we're not carrying everything in our head for our teens anymore. And modeling some of that problem solving and accountability, letting them gain skills that they're going to need long after they leave the home. For example, this might look like letting your teen manage their own reminders and face consequences for things like missed homework. It could be being clear about what their job is now, even if they do it imperfectly. For example, making their bed or unpacking the dishwasher, even if it's not perfect. Don't do something for your teen that they can do for themselves, like making their bed. It could also be involving teens in the planning around meal schedules or cooking schedules or some of their commitments and getting them to decide which days they're going to be part of something. And as your teens get older and can drive, they can even help with some of the shopping. But I think this comes to the third one. As a family, how do we do the stuff with our teens or even with our partner and bring it all together as our family, that we're not still holding the planning all in your mind for everything? I think you could start out possibly holding a weekly family meeting at the start. Talk about upcoming events or needs and distribute some of the planning and responsibilities of the week across the family. You might do this at your family dinners. I've spoken about family dinners before on the podcast. You could do one of your family dinners as your family planning meeting, and you limit it with a timer if you need to 10 minutes or 5 minutes that your teams start and end time, and you're just going to talk about what needs to be done for the week. As the planner, make the invisible work visible. Use visual tools like wall calendars or something on the fridge or a chore board. I've had a chore board up in my home for about 10 years now, and that has helped me and my family. It helps me not nag. I can say, look at the board, and then you can see what day you're on and what you're doing. You could also use a shared digital workspace or apps that help this planning more tangible on everybody's devices. Shared shopping lists. This is one of my loves. We've got shared notes on that goes to all of our phones. And when somebody needs something, it gets put onto the shopping list. And as my teens have got older, the agreement is that they can help with the shop. They can't say, I didn't have the list, because the list is on everyone's phone. Also, creating shared digital calendars can help both partners and everybody monitor and maintain the schedules. You might have a different color for different family members if you like. You might, between partners, to divide by domains rather than tasks. So you could decide as partners to split certain domains or areas like school and food areas and sport, so that each person is responsible for that whole area rather than a specific chore. Then also having regular check-ins. This could come as you need less and less family meetings, but you could still say, well, once a month we're going to have a regular check-in and just talk about the mental load distribution and talk about who's carrying what. You could either do this as partners or as a family. And then as a single person, build community support. Build community with other local families for sharing school pickups, sharing childcare arrangements during emergencies, carpooling. Try to learn to say yes when people offer support rather than saying no and carrying it all yourself. It's so important to acknowledge that these changes take time, and it really requires us to keep the goal of connection and not control over everything that's going on in our home, allowing for some imperfection and allowing ourselves to delegate and let tasks be done differently. And I know for me, that's something I've had to take on rather than trying to make everything run absolutely perfectly in my home. Because when the invisible load is shared, families just feel calmer, not because everything is perfect, but because no one feels alone in holding it all. So my hope for you is that this week you could possibly notice one mental task that you usually carry automatically and then say it out loud, person that it belongs to. If it's your teen or your partner, say to them, I've been holding this in my head for quite a while now. This is what it is. From now on, it's yours. And then don't take it back when it doesn't happen or it's done imperfectly. Finally, it's important for us to remember this isn't about withdrawing our care from our families or step back completely. It's about adjusting as our family needs change. I'd love for you to drop me a note and let me know what you've tried and what you've done to reduce some of that mental load on you this week. Have a good week and see you next time. If you found this episode helpful or gained some useful insight from it, please subscribe and review wherever you get your podcasts, and consider sharing it with your friends and family. I hope to see you next episode, but in the meantime, keep parenting with your teen's future adults in mind.
Hope 1032. Thanks for listening.